see your slides at least, Matt. That's better than where we were before. So,
okay.
and we've got the recording going. So, Matt, over to you if you want to say hello and who you are.
Give me a sec. Can you see that?
It's saying loading. So
that's okay.
There we go. We're in.
There we go.
Fantastic.
Okay, so my name is Matt Andrews. I'm a Year 6 teacher and I'm the Health and Wellbeing Lead in Charles Williams Primary. I wasn't the only member of our team. There was 3 of us. It was myself, Steph Brindley, who is a reception teacher in school, and Linda Ball, who's one of our high-level TAs. And we started working with James and Rob and the Cynefin team. And initially, I think we came to the second meeting, didn't we, James? And it was very much finding our feet, and we started to kind of look at the approach, the spiral approach, and we started to do our scan, and we had some hunches. All the terminology is coming back now, James.
10 out of 10.
Yeah, and we started thinking about the things we could address within our spiral of inquiry. And for us, one of the biggest things was play. We had lots of problems at play times. And we were quite open and honest about it was something that we thought could make a really big impact in, on the whole school community. So we had a really good think about it. And obviously the whole school approach seeks to support a positive culture where everyone forms a strong relationship. And we thought that it would have a benefit on a whole school level, both for the children, both for the staff, for learning time, and make a really kind of big impact that way. So initially, we sat down, we were learning about the spiral, scanning, focusing, and it definitely, I would say, the point there is the spiral has no end. Our spiral hasn't concluded. I would say there have been improvements with regard to play and our playtimes and our lunch times, but as I'll allude to later, it's a very flexible process, as I'm sure you're all aware, and there are other curveballs that are thrown at you to, change the way in which your lunch times or your play times work, and so we're kind of trying to navigate that at the moment as well. And I would say we're still in the process of, changing to certain things and implementing certain things that we've talked about previously. So yeah, it's a collaborative approach, and we sat down initially, and Steph, Linda, and myself kind of said, well, we think there's an issue with play times. And then we kind of thought, well, we need to confirm that. We need to make sure that it is something that was definitely happening. But what we noticed was behaviour was poor on the yard. There was a lack of ability to share and play cooperatively. Children were struggling with unstructured time, as I'm sure you'll all find that most of your problems, ours was specifically happening on the yard at lunchtime. We were finding it was happening more on the yard at lunchtime as well, rather than at break time, because we had a member of staff on duty at break time, whereas at lunchtime we had more midday supervisors. There were still instances of poor behaviour and dysregulation during transition times that are impacting on learning, and inability to play with equipment properly. Some children were struggling having come back post-COVID. And some children were struggling with the traffic and the noise in the yard. I had a couple of emails off children via their ELSA sessions saying that they were finding it particularly difficult. And there was a lack of respect. And we noticed a real difference, like I said previously, when the yard was staffed by teachers or teaching assistants, and when it was staffed by lunchtime supervisors. So that was our initial scan. And then we needed to be assured that we knew that was kind of where we were at. So we sought pupil voice. We spoke to our Wellbeing bunch, and we received feedback from each class via our Wellbeing bunch representatives, who confirmed that, initially they said, we want more equipment. The equipment's not great, and we're struggling for things to do. And we kind of thought, yeah, we know that's an issue, but I think what the spiral has taught us is that to wait and to pause before acting. We could have just provided a lot of new equipment, but we thought, it could very much well have gone exactly the same way as previously, where it wasn't looked after or cared for. Myself, Mrs. Brindley and Mrs. Ball observed playtimes throughout the school during the autumn term. There was an increased number of lunchtime reflections and break time reflections. Break time reflection was reintroduced because of some of the behavioural issues. Like I said previously, I've received some emails from our ELSA. We analysed our Thrive questionnaire. We completed Churn, although it wasn't returned to us within a timely manner, within a manner where we could implement it. And then we conducted a teacher questionnaire and a chest questionnaire from the children. So we really tried to make sure that we knew what was going on before we acted. And one of the questions that the spiral kind of encouraged us to look at was, why does it matter? There was an impact on learning time. The situation from the yard was being transferred to the classroom. We talked about the social development of children and collaborative play. And there was lots of children with high anxiety on the yard, looking at mental well-being. And that idea of feeling safe was really important, which is something that we questioned and discussed with James and Rob. And that formed part of our questionnaire. And ultimately, we wanted them to enjoy playtimes and lunchtimes, use the time where they could develop kind of social interactions and enjoy their day. Lots of them, if you ask them, what do you look forward to, they'll say lunchtime. But then we were finding that, it wasn't something that was consistent across all children. But one of the big things that came, so these were some of the questions we asked in our questionnaire. Reception to year 2, do you feel safe in the yard? What do you like about playtime? What do you dislike? Do you know the rules? Do you let others join in your game? And then we expanded that for year 3 to 6. Some similar questions, but do you think playtime is fair? Which was a really interesting thing that happened within our inquiry, looking at the equity of playtime, which was really important. And that links to the question, do you think each year group should have their own equipment? Are you dismissed at the correct time for playtime? Do you know the rules on the yard? Do all staff use the same rules? Do you let others join in your game? And how could we encourage more children to play together? So one of the biggest things we found out from our questionnaires was that not all children were being released at the same time for play, whether it was going over 5 minutes or by the time they got their coats and they were out on the yard. So as classes were coming out at different times, we were finding that lots of people thought, well, do you know what? You're out early, you've got the play equipment, I can't now play with it. And they had that issue with the idea, how equitable it was as to what time they were released. So that was something we were quite aware of. Lots of children said that the play equipment wasn't being used correctly or appropriately, which was something else we kind of thought about as well. And then we've asked similar things of the staff. So we've got an approach from kind of all stakeholders. The scan gave us quite a lot of ideas, but we really thought it was important to reconfirm our scan. So in a whole staff meeting, we asked, what have you noticed about how children and adults interact on the playground since returning after COVID? Has this impacted on learning? But most importantly, we asked the staff how we could improve playtimes and lunchtime. So we implemented a fishbone activity that we talked about during our sessions with the Cynefin team. And it was really interesting. The staff gave us back a lot of ideas and things that we discussed as a team. But when we then started to break them down and we were thinking, well, we need to make sure that this is kind of a tangible thing that we can achieve. We're currently in the process. There's building work on site. We'd lost half of our play area, which was fenced off due to building work. So we had to, try and use things that were we could implement that were manageable. And yes, it would have been lovely to have a new part zones of the playground and new areas and quiet spaces and things like that. But it just wasn't viable until the building work is complete, and we're then able to address the way in which we zone our playground. That wasn't possible. So we were looking at things that we did have control over, that we could kind of impact on. So it was great to get that feedback from the staff that they were thinking along the same lines. And what we did with the staff was we discussed and agreed upon simple things that we could do. So we agreed that teachers would teach playground games as part of their summer health and wellbeing sessions. Our breaks are staggered, so 1, 2 play together, 3, 4 play together, and 5, 6 play together. And then for the children and staff and wider school community to agree a set of consistent playground rules to be displayed on all playgrounds. And it was to be driven by the Cynefin, so the pupil voice group, and then to engage the health and wellbeing class reps. And what we've done is we did act, and it was out of necessity. We then also did a check-in with James and Rob, and we engaged with Dayton, which was really beneficial. And it was nice to hear that they were experiencing similar issues, that we weren't alone in this. And we took action out of necessity, really. So what we did was we found that football was a really big issue on the yard, and currently there wasn't sufficient space. So what we did was we moved our provision around. We moved football to a smaller yard, which we were previously using for a quiet space. And the larger area then was accessible for everyone. And we staggered it so that we were finding the football was a bit of a flare point, actually, for instances on the yard. And year groups were really struggling to play together. So we split it. Year 3 played Monday, Year 4 played Tuesday, and vice versa with Year 6. And then there's an O-ball Friday. Something that the Wellbeing bunch have suggested since we've done this is that instead of repeating football twice a week, they'd like to see a different sport. So it might be football Monday, Tuesday, and netball Wednesday, Thursday, which we're taking on board, and we're looking at that as well. We then asked the children specifically, how do we know we've made a difference? And it was really nice that they were willing to chat to us, and whether it worked. Before I press play and it worked, and you should hear one of our Year 6s from last year, we bought a lot of new equipment. We gave the responsibility to the representatives from the Wellbeing bunch. Bear with me a sec, just pause it. And one way in which we know that, it was all labelled, everything was colour coded, and it was they took it out, and different classes had responsibility to take it out and rotate it. Purely by the fact that the equipment was well looked after. There was a little bit of wear and tear, but nothing was lost or damaged or broken, which in comparison to play equipment previously has made a big difference. Looking back at it now, it doesn't sound that we've done a lot, but I think what we did was we engaged with the children. We spoke to the Wellbeing bunch, the Cynefin. We spoke to staff and ensured that children were out on time. The change in the football yard made a really big difference to us. It took a lot of traffic off of our main yard. And then we spoke to the children as we went through the spiral and asked them, how do we know we've made a difference? And there's some examples now that I'll play for you of last year's Year 6.
Tell me something that's improved.
Can you hear that, James?
It's very quiet, Matt. I don't know if
it might well be worth skipping it. They largely confirmed that there were improvements, that there were still improvements to be made, but it was largely positive. Even the boys with regard to football, they were pleased. So yeah, feedback from teachers, TAs, and some supervisors had been positive. Playground equipment was cared for by the children. Nothing was lost. And at one point, previously, when our caretaker went up onto the flat roof, the number of footballs that were returned was astronomical. So we didn't have that issue anymore. It did make a difference. In the end, we decided to, when we were in the middle of the summer term, we kind of thought, look, it's not the right time now to introduce these games and to sort out our consistent rules. So we've left it until the winter term. We have introduced consistent games taught through health and wellbeing sessions, which the children have enjoyed. We are still working on the Senedd to come up with a set of consistent rules. But like I said earlier, there have been some curveballs thrown at us. I'll come back to that. I mean, in light of the way in which entitlement to free school meals has impacted on resources and changed the structure of lunch times, we need to investigate how much free time a child actually has to play during lunchtime and also within the school day. So this is a discussion that I've had with our deputy head and said, if you look at the actual time that children have when they come out, if they're out on time for break time, they have 20 minutes. By the time they've had their sandwiches or they're lined up for lunches, and we've got much more children going through our canteen because we're 2.5 elementary school, how much time are they actually playing, or how much time are they lining up? Are they waiting? Are they eating? Are they then lining back up? So that's something that we're going to continue to use and develop our spiral to make sure that we are giving them sufficient entitlement time to play. Because, coming back to Article 31, it's really important. Children have the right to rest and leisure to engage in play and recreational activities. It does impact. So the things we've really found is playtime must be fair. They've got to have the same time. Equity is really important, being released from the classroom on time, giving them a choice. They do need some support to play collaboratively and share. And those perceived injustices are one of the biggest things that can spark, an issue or anything like that. So, it's just navigating those things. But that was our experience. It was positive. I'm going to stop presenting now. I'm sure you're all had enough of listening to me drone on. But happy to take any questions or anything that you've got to ask.
Thank you, Matt. I think what I always remember about this spiral is, and you touched upon it on that last slide, was the perceived injustices, that the actions we take as adults in our school community, and that kind of that rush or that kind of that kind of eagerness we've had coming back from COVID to make sure that children are catching up, and the impact that that's had in terms of we found ourselves in situations, haven't we, where we've tried to increase the amount of time that children might be in the classroom because that sort of feel that need to catch up academically. And of course, that's taken its toll. I mean, a lot of schools have felt that pressure to take time out of playtime. And the knock-on effect there is that perceived injustice, isn't it, that the young people feel, and the impact that then has on their ability to regulate, opportunities to share and connect with one another, and that real importance that play has to them, because for them, coming to school isn't just about the learning, is it? It's about those social opportunities which they get to do during those unstructured times. And what I loved about your spiral is how it kind of started off from this kind of initial observation that, we're losing a lot of footballs, a lot of equipment's getting damaged, and you sort of drilled down deeper into understanding, well, what is driving that, and the impact that was having on the relationships between the year 5-6 group, for instance, who I remember when they falling out, weren't they, over who was losing the equipment. And how you've taken action to address that, and the shift that's come as a result of that. So I really love what you did there. I'll shut up now. I'll throw it open to the rest of the group and see who else has got any comments, observations, or questions from Matt whilst he's here. Thank you.
I mean, we used our cluster quite a lot as well, because health and wellbeing leads. So when I was on a cluster day and I was talking to Lodge Hill or Langston, and I'd pick their brains and say, well, how are your playtime structured, and how are you zoning things? And I think we had some of the answers were there, that we just needed to make the change and to go, well, actually we need to take football off the main yard. We need to put it in an area where it's self-contained. We need to make sure that was staffed. And just using the resources we had to the best of our ability, and making sure that there was a consistency amongst staff, that everyone was coming out on time, because that was one of the biggest perceived injustices. I'm not getting enough play. I'm not out on time. One of the things that one of my year sixes from last year said, actually, was, we don't get a long play anymore. And I went, I thought about it, and I thought, from the perspective of a child, no, because you're for whatever reason, with regard to the way in which lunch times have changed due to coming back from COVID, or change in free school meal entitlement. No, you are told, right, you've got half an hour, you've got this time to play, and then you're here for lunch for this time, and then you're lining up there. And we talked, James, about actually just observing a random child for a day and counting how many minutes they play for, and what type of play they engage in, and seeing how that works. And that's something that, is still on my list of things to do, revisiting it now, even though things are a lot better. I know schools that have an afternoon playtime, and it's not a big one, but does it make a difference? And we don't. We're not seeing the same problems this year as we did last year. Things are working, but there's I think you can always improve things, but it's just to see really to what extent are children accessing play.
Right. Okay. Beth, I think, were you going to ask a question? I apologise for putting you on the spot there.
No, I was, and it's a bit of a random one. It's just I work solely in an infant school, so with reception year 1, year 2, and the spiral that you've done, I just wondered, do you think the children would be able to access the questionnaires and things at that young age as well, or does it need the older children to be involved?
So the way in which we did it was our teachers from nursery to, or I think it was reception to 2, they very much they talked about it carpet time and recorded the answers of the group in a way that was appropriate, because it would, our year 3 to 6 were fine to complete the questionnaire on a Google form, and they were okay. 1 or 2 may have needed some support, but it was done in quite a discussion between teacher and her class, and it was quite consistent stuff that was coming back. It was really interesting actually, and to see what they were saying, and you interpret it how you kind of suppose how you can, and what it throws up really. I probably got more from 3 to 6 than I think Mrs. Brindley got from reception to 2, but it was equally valuable. So I think if you're finding that play is an issue, it's having those conversations and starting those dialogues, whether at whatever age they are, to be able to start your spiral. And I hope that helps. I'm sure it's hope that helps, Beth.
No, it really does. It's just my worry was trying to talk to them and they all pile in. It was just getting a consistent way of talking to them about it. I think carpet time is a really good way forward.
Or whether it's in smaller groups.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. One of your focused activities.
No, that's brilliant. That is. Thank you.
I was wondering then, Matt, as you were speaking about your years 3 to 6, they would have been year groups which would have experienced playtime in a different format. So they had something to another to compare it to, whereas your younger year groups that were perhaps just starting off in school, that was all that the structure that they were being served with play as it stood was all they knew. So there was nothing to compare it to, like a before situation for them. So I wonder if that's perhaps why you got very different.
Yeah, and I think we had more staff prior to COVID, and we were able to staff the front yard so that it wasn't split break times. It was consistently run at the same time. So our playtimes have changed quite a lot over the last couple of years, and it's just been adapting really. For instance, we had to, a couple of weeks ago, a member of staff was off. We cut down the football yards to once a week for each year group as opposed to twice. They asked, we explained, and it's been reinstated and they've been okay. But I think you're always going to need to adapt and be flexible in kind of whichever way you go, because things happen.
Has there been any sort of noticeable difference in terms of the amount of time that staff have to spend addressing challenging behaviours in the afternoon? I'm just where I'm going with that, Matt, is I'm thinking if time has been increased for allowing play, does that then improve the quality of the interactions that take place in class during the rest of the day, because there's less low-level disruptive behaviour, because they've kind of had that opportunity to burn off some steam and get it out of their systems?
I haven't heard as many complaints of staff consistently dealing with low-level disruption and things spilling on from the yard after lunch times. I can think of a few instances where I've had to deal with it in my class recently, but I think that's partly due to some of the characters that I have. But other than that, no, I don't think we've got as big an issue this year as we've had previously. So yeah, it has made a difference.
Great. Ian, I can see your hand is up there. Would you like to come in?
Yeah, thanks, James. Hi, Matt.
Yeah.
I'm not sure if this is a question or just a reflection, but I just found that really fascinating, and particularly how, you know, the kind of the initial kind of concern led into something that had much deeper kind of meaning for the experiences of your school, really. I was really just struck by the kind of the equity of playtime, I think you called it, and the kind of injustices, and thinking that, you know, that it almost felt like the process helped you to kind of recognize that. And I think you said at the beginning, one of the things that was useful about the spiral process was that it taught us to wait and pause before acting. And it just made me think, oh, it should be so easy for us as adults to kind of contribute to those injustices that our young people are feeling by rushing into action with the best intentions. And I think your process for me has really demonstrated the kind of value of that stepping back, of kind of looking at other ways to find out what's going on and to come to some kind of deeper meanings.
It was quite hard, actually, because initially we thought, oh, we can do this, we can do this, we can do this, and that'll all make a difference. Nice. And it wasn't until we were in a meeting and James said, well, don't act straight away, wait and pause. And I think the spiral makes you really consider whether the action you're taking is the right action. You know, so what? Like, so what's it addressing? What's it gonna, you know, improve? And I think just by, you know, I think I've got a better understanding of where the children are coming from. And you think, being, you know, a 10-year-old, 11-year-old, that injustice is really important to you. And if it's going on, then that's not fair. And why is it not fair? And this is the reason why. And to discuss that is, you know, it's really helped.
Thank you.
Rob.
I'm just going to ask a little bit about how the children, I mean, change is disruptive by its nature. And so when you were proposing to change break times, lunch times, and who gets to do what in where, in you know, it sounds quite, that's quite significant. How did the children receive the news that as a result of you keep asking them what changes like to happen in that process of, you know, of it coming ahead? Did they, you know, what was the emotional kind of response, or how did they receive it? I mean,
I think they were ready for it at the time, because there were so many problems on the yard. You know, it was really impacting on their well-being. Football was a big problem, big issue. And when it moved to a different area, I think a lot of children breathed a sigh of relief. There was children who didn't want to be hit by the ball, that didn't feel that they had space to play. So for us, one of the biggest things, I know, and it was kind of action through necessity by moving it to another area, along with kind of new equipment and the like. It just made a big difference. And I don't want to say it worked overnight, but there was a little teething period, but it definitely made a positive difference to us.
Okay, thank you.
Rhiannon.
Thanks so much, Matt, for that. That was absolutely fascinating. I'm new to the team, so this is my first real life case example of a spiral, and really fascinating to hear it. I was struck by a number of things. One, what a really robust process this was that you went through. And I was thinking that, you know, this wasn't about doing to children, coming up with a quick fix and a solution. This was really, it feels to me from listening to you that this was really a collaborative and empowering process where the children's voices were heard. They'd have a sense of agency around that, where they work collaboratively with you and the staff to create shared solutions. And I'm thinking that as an intervention and relationship building exercise in and of itself is really powerful. It's making me also think about an example I think I shared in one of our network launches, which was about kind of the dangers of quick fixes in relation to problems, if you like, and playtime, unstructured times, I would imagine, are a challenge across many of our schools. And I was thinking about one school that I'm aware of where there was really boisterous play by the boys at break time. It was a secondary school setting, and so the solution that was immediately imposed was, well, we'll take the ball away and you're not allowed to go on the Astro anymore. So this group of boys were banned from the Astro, found another ball and started playing football off the Astro, which created its own problems. So the next solution was, we'll take the ball off you altogether. So what did they have left? They didn't have a ball to kick around or to play with or throw around. They just had each other. So they ended up throwing each other around, and somebody got quite badly injured as a result of that. Then where do you then go from there? Well, you're banned from playtimes altogether. If we do that, of course, we're then going to see problems spilling out into a classroom setting. And I guess I just give that as an example of how you can see how schools, busy schools, can be reactive in relation to situations, but how if we don't take the time to stand back and really think about the correct solutions, we're potentially creating more problems, if you like. And then the final reflection really, again, comes back, it seems like the perceived injustices is something that has resonated for many of us here. But I was just thinking about, you know, kind of the opportunity for adults to talk to children about perceived injustices are fabulous opportunities for social and emotional learning, aren't they? And, you know, what we know within health is that there's been something like an 800% increase in the number of referrals for neurodevelopmental assessments post-COVID. Our children are struggling with social communication difficulties. And again, I think that opportunities through play to help children develop those social skills are really immeasurable. So I just wanted to say what a fabulous example to bring and kickstart this Learning Burst season for Cynefin. Thank you.
And thank you all for your support during our spiral. We didn't really, you know, it was that kind of pausing before because we could do this, we could do this, we could do this, and if we had, we wouldn't have developed the understanding that we did, which was beneficial to both learners and ourselves.
Great. And Matt, the offer of support is still there to continue with your spiral. If you need to check in and check out with us, we've not gone away anywhere. So do feel free to utilise that resource as you proceed as well. Beth, I can see you're back again, so chime away.
I can't help myself. Every time. I'm just wondering, how much staff time did it take to do this?
How much staff time?
Yeah, if I'm trying to sell it to the school where I am at the minute, they're going to want to know how much time it takes away from other things to actually do the spirals.
I think there was there 5 or 6 meetings, James?
You had six official meetings, didn't you, with the where we went through the actual stages of the spiral as part of the learning the Wellbeing network, and then we came in and did a couple of meetings one-to-one.
Yeah. 2 one-to-one meetings after school, which were probably about an hour and a half each.
You did, and you provided ice cream for one of them, which was most welcome.
My head teacher gave me half a day if I asked, so I probably in total had about a day, and so a lot of it, you know, don't get me wrong, some of it took place in my own time, some of it took place in my PPA, but it's about, I think as teachers we spin a lot of plates, so it was just trying to fit it in and make sure that it was appropriate. I'd led one staff meeting on it, and you know, because it was such an issue, it was something that impacted on everyone. There was a good buy-in from the staff. Everyone wanted to see an improvement, and it was something tangible we could deliver on, which really worked. So yeah, I think it's important to get that buy-in from your staff, and making sure within your scan it is an issue that everyone it'll impact on everyone and benefit everyone.
Thank you.
That's all right.
And Beth, that offer of support goes to you and your school community as well. If you want us to come and talk to you, to be involved in a spiral, we would love to come and speak to you. Just get in touch with us directly and we can arrange that.
James, you might regret offering that.
Absolutely not. But I had a question for you, Matt, before I said that. It was what was I thinking? Forget it. It'll probably spring back into my mind at some point. But any other reflections or any offers of questions or anything whilst we're still here? No. I think my question was around the time that was spent on getting to understand. Do you feel you've got a good understanding of what was at the heart of these issues now, and was that worth spending that time on it to really get that understanding?
I think it was equity. Personally, I think it was, is it fair? Is everyone getting the same? And that kind of came down to time, equipment, space. And yeah, I think until we really drill down to it, we wouldn't have made any difference.
So in the long run, it's intense, but you can see difference.
Yeah, definitely
coming through. No, that's really positive. So, Ian.
Yeah, thanks, James. Sorry, it's just a kind of last thought from me, and I sound a bit like I'm obsessed. And Matt, maybe this is a slightly leading question, but I guess I'm really interested in, when you invest like a lot of time and work into a process like this, and you come out, or along the way you identify these really interesting themes around equity and perceived injustice and things. I wonder, does that have any impact beyond the issue that you've worked on? So are there things that has it made you think about things that in other parts of the school or
probably impacted on my classroom practice?
Right.
Yeah, because if and especially when you're dealing with behavior issues and you're thinking, you try and take both sides anyway, but it's more about what's at the, I've got one child who perceives a lot of things to be, there's a lot of injustice, and it's trying to understand where that's coming from. And it just makes you stop and think. So yeah, it does impact on other parts of your practice as well, I think.
Yeah, that's really helpful, because it made me think about the fact that your work is a really good example of making sure the voices in your community are heard alongside this idea of perceived injustice and the links to what we talk about as the core components of well-being, and that sense of agency and having a voice, and what a difference that makes to your well-being experiences. Feel really connected to what you've done.
Yeah, what I'm hearing there is like it's almost like you're putting yourself in the child's shoes and thinking, well, what impact would this have, this decision that as a big person is making on this little person, and how would they perceive that? I think that's really valuable, putting ourselves into that perspective. And we often can overlook that, can't we? We just make decisions and assume that we know best, but then when we put ourselves in the perspective of the young person who's affected by those decisions, it's then we truly understand the kind of wider impact, the injustices, the knock-on effects that one action might have, like the example, Rhiannon, that you gave earlier, that ends up developing as a result of us being too reactive, perhaps. It's really great to hear those examples of that, and exciting to hear that that we can put ourselves into that position and think what it was like, or what it is like to be a child in that situation. Okay. All right. Well, at 10 to 5 on a Wednesday after a dark, gloomy Wednesday afternoon, Matt, you've offered a bit of brightness there for us. It's been absolutely fantastic. I've really enjoyed hearing what you've had to say and all the reflections from people as well. We are coming back together again on February the 8th for further discussion around play and development, which will be a session led by our team, where we'll be talking about some of the wider research around that, the impacts that it can have. But I think this really practical example of a spiral in action has been absolutely amazing to hear, because it takes what we'll be talking about in the next session, and we'll be able to kind of build upon that and draw upon those experiences that you've had in your school, Matt, as well. And I think it's been brilliant. So thank you so much sharing that.
Right.
If you can come on February the 8th, it's an open invite to every school in Gwent. So we will definitely be in touch about that. We've also recorded this session, as you know, as well. We will host this on our YouTube channel, so we'll send out a link to all interested parties, so there'll be an opportunity to kind of look at this again if you want, or share it with colleagues. But Matt, thank you so much for all the time and the effort you've put into this, and for the rest of your team as well, who have been absolutely fantastic to work with, and for rewarding us with ice cream on that hot day back in July when we came to see you as well. Never forget that. But thank you so much. We look forward to seeing you again soon, and do get in touch if you want any sort of support or advice from our team on sort of aspects of our work. If you're curious about it, we can come and have that conversation with you. Okay, we shall sign off from there then, shall we? Thanks so much, everyone. Goodbye.
Thanks, everybody. Thanks, Matt. Bye.
Thanks a lot.
Bye.
Bye.